What's up, everybody? Welcome to the show. We're here live still after many episodes at the Park City event for our Winter Mastermind, 10th annual Winter Mastermind here for GoBundance. And I've got a guy sitting with me to my right that I got to know through our Emerge program. But before that, learned of him through the One Life program, which Tim Rode, one of our founders, created. Prepare to be inspired. Prepare to be blown away. He's a young guy. He's done a ton of stuff. He's an entrepreneur, a business owner, a landlord, a real estate investor, a father. All of that is now. But he went through some really, really difficult times with addiction, with incarceration, with relapse, with overdosing. I mean, it's going to get deep, folks. It's going to get really deep, and I think you're going to learn a ton and be inspired by this man. So Sterling Shrout, welcome, brother.
Thanks for having me, Jamie.
Of course, man. It's good to see you. It's good to see you. How's Park City been for you so far?
Love it.
Yeah.
Everything about it.
This your first GoBundance event?
Yes.
It is. I know you've been around Tim for a while, so I wasn't sure if he brought you to one or two of the others. So.
No, this is, he can bring me to all the rest of them now, so I'll be here.
So let's level set right now very quickly, almost like statistically. So how old are you right now, and where are you from?
Yeah, so I'm 31 years old, and then from Dayton, Ohio.
Dayton, Ohio. All right, and that's where you still are?
Yes.
Okay, good. Now let's go back to the beginning. So tell us about a little bit of your upbringing, which we just talked about, kind of went through the addiction, but like give us the beginnings of you, and just tell us your story for a few minutes here, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, so... You know, I was raised in a family, parents split up when I was young. There's some other religious parts to it I don't really go into too much.
Sure.
But I was raised in extreme poverty, and that's not a stretch of it, stretching it in any way, shape, or form.
Can you describe this? Give me some conditions of what you were raised in.
Yeah, so when I was younger, we actually moved out west out here to Montana. And, 10, 11, 12 years old, a lot of times I would literally hunt for the meat we would eat.
Wow.
That was a part of our budget was, knowing that I was either going to shoot a deer or hunt pheasant or, things like that to supplement our, food budget. It was great. My mom was a secretary at a chemical place. I think she made $10 an hour, and she supported me and my brother for some time on that. So. Wow.
All right, continue. So you're growing up in extreme poverty. Continue from there.
Yeah. I was very impressionable, and it's somewhat of a joke, but somewhat not. The movie Blow with Johnny Depp or whatever, where he's taking plants across imaginary lines or something like that. That was the only way I knew how to make. Or the only way I thought that you could make big money. It was like, oh, well, he sold drugs, and look at the mansion, they're jumping in this giant pool and things like that. I didn't know anybody that made decent money. Everybody I knew was poor. So because of, how I grew up economically, the things that I was able to do or not do became kind of the friends I hung out with. The things that they fell into, I fell into, and that would have been drugs. And then being naturally entrepreneurial, I fell into selling drugs really early. At 15, I got 5 years probation. I got arrested for a pound of pot and like 10 guns. And this is going to be kind of a theme, but the guns weren't for gangster stuff. It was, country life. So 15, that happens, and that starts this big ball rolling of probation, court, probation officers. That became my lifestyle. Sleeping with a bottle of urine because my urine's dirty, so I've got the resource officer at the school's kid peeing in a bottle for me, and
wow.
So I wouldn't fail probation. Anyways, we make it through that at 18, end up moving back to Ohio, where I live now in Dayton. And the kids that I left at that time, well, guess what? That's what they're doing. They're selling weed. They're doing drugs and all that. I'm like, hey, I know this game. And I take right back to it immediately.
Yeah.
It sucks to say I was good at it, but I was very effective or efficient. Ultimately, they ended up selling drugs for me. I surpassed them very quickly. I just wasn't street smart. I was 18, 19 years old. That culminates with the ATF, a task force, some other groups kicking in my door. I got raided for engaging in a pattern of corrupt activity for running a drug ring, aggravated possession of drugs, aggravated trafficking, and then possession of a dangerous ordinance because I had dynamite. And the dynamite, that was more back to that country thing. It was, I wanted to blow up a washing machine or something. It wasn't like, a gangster,
Sure.
thing.
Yeah, no intent to take down a building or, right.
It wasn't some super malicious, stick of dynamite. It's just, that's the weird stuff you trade for drugs.
Yeah.
So.
Wow. Okay. ATF kicks in your door. Kind of take me from there. What happens next? Was there? Did you go through a trial? Was there a plea agreement? Because that sounds like a pretty hefty charge. You're 18. You're an adult at this point. Mm-hmm. In my brain, I'm thinking, God, you had to go away for a long time.
Yeah. So, well, they use that leverage point to try to get you to tell on other people, and at that point, that was consequences of my own actions.
Yeah.
That and specifically, they wanted me to. I think they called it wear the team jersey. And I asked them, like, how do I don't have kids, but like, how are you going to keep my kid from getting hit with a brick one day walking to school? In the future, like that's not a realistic thing for me to tell on people. So yeah, I was facing up to like 62 years in prison. I fought the case for like 9 months. They basically counted as my first offense because the very first one was a juvenile.
Yeah.
And I did get it pled down to 3 years mandatory time.
Wow.
So right before I turned 20, I went to prison, and I got out right before I turned 23.
This is maximum security?
Medium.
Medium security prison.
Yeah.
Wow. When did you know did it ever feel like you were out of control? Or because of how impressionable the movie Blow, all of that, was this just like, no, I'm killing it?
Yeah. And this theme will come up again in the future, but you adjust to your normal really quickly. I think all people do, or all people are able to. You can adjust to a new high, a new level of success, or you can adjust to a new level of failure really quickly. And so I didn't necessarily know that anything was out of the ordinary. I was just living my life, as ridiculous as that sounds. Now, after getting raided and fighting the case, that was a very bad place mentally, emotionally, and that's where actually first time I used heavy drugs, heroin, things like that. And that's where that drug addiction really kicks in, and not just the lifestyle or the means to support myself.
Where's your mom or your dad in all of this? Like, are they side by side with you as you go through some of the stuff? Were they aware of what you were doing?
No, obviously, or not obviously, but yeah, parents have never done drugs. Was raised Jehovah's Witness. Drugs weren't even a thing. They were just bad. My siblings, my brother, he struggled with drug addiction in the past. Yeah, this wasn't a family business by any means.
No, that's not what I mean. I mean, like, where are they in terms of like, so their son is going through all of this.
Yeah.
So are they blown away? I mean, it sounds like they're kind of shocked maybe with the upbringing that you had, but like, did they disown you, or were they right there with you as you were going through all of these issues, the trial, all of that stuff? Not the trial, but the plea agreement.
Obviously upset. They don't really understand it, or why would you do that, or things like that, because at their generation, it was just like, oh, you go, you get out of high school, you go get a job, you make decent money, stay with the company, keep making decent money.
Yeah.
And even if you struggle, this isn't something you do. So it was a shock to him. My dad was kind of, here nor there with it, kind of how he always was. But with mom, I know that was actually really hard for her emotionally and things like that. And she actually made the effort while I was incarcerated to come see me regularly. Other than that, I didn't really see too many people.
Gotcha. You started getting into heavy drugs, it sounds like, while you were going through this 9 months of fighting it. Mm-hmm. Is that the time frame when you really got deep into that cocaine, heroin, all of that stuff?
Yeah, that's when I didn't even know I was strung out. I was just, back to that. This is my lifestyle. Yeah. And then looking back, like I withdrawed in, I forget what the CRC or whatever, the Central Reception Center, or whatever it's called. I didn't even know I was withdrawing. I thought I was sick. And, I was very naive to drug addiction because I was very naive to drugs. Growing up, I didn't know anything about them. until I was a teenager, and I sold them. And still, it's just whatever information you gather from experience. And,
Wow. Did you need prison?
I don't believe that anything good came from me going to prison. I believe it made this a lot harder and set me back farther.
Go on that. That's interesting. In my mind, but the reason I asked that question was, maybe I have access, but in prison, you at least would get clean, it seems, right? Or it would be harder to be strung out. So maybe you can gain perspective or whatever. But tell me why it got harder.
So in prison, I had mandatory time. So if I did good, I did bad. It didn't matter. I got out at the same time. I ate diabetics, nerve pills, Neurontin, Ultram, Tramadol. I'm trying to think of the different names of them. To get high, I cooked wine, brewed hooch, whatever you want to, whatever the term you want to call it is. Smoked cigarettes, whatever I could do to not just be focused on, the bad situation that is being in prison. We partied as much as possible in there. The people I hung out with weren't in prison trying to make themselves better. They were, it's human warehousing, in my opinion.
Yeah.
A lot of the people are in there for like child support or a majority, drug crimes. For me, I was really offended when I went because I didn't necessarily have, and I'm not saying that it was okay to sell drugs. There wasn't a victim. So, doing 3 years, I watched a couple different, say sex offenders come in, get released, reoffend, and come back before
you were.
I could even be released. And, it was because a psychedelic substance that I had sold that somebody disagrees with. That's why I was locked up, not because, this person could say he did this to me. Mm-hmm. He took this from me. Whatever. And that's its own moral scale of drug use and whatever. Yeah, and it's the same psychedelics that now we're getting research on that are like helping people. And that's a whole, thing. So
no, I get it. So you said right before your 23rd birthday, you're released.
Yeah. And that took me a long time to readjust to society. I specifically remember getting out and going to the gas station and just somebody standing too close to me, like not giving me the distance that I was used to from being incarcerated. Like somebody came and stood right behind me, and I freaked out and asked them, what the F their problem was, and I did not have. I was not adjusted to society at that point, especially being that young and impressionable. I adjusted to that reality in there really quickly. Actually, and something I want to bring up, like you had mentioned how my parents were, my mom coming to see me, to visits, things like that. That was huge. That helped me a ton to retain a little bit of normalcy or whatever.
Right.
Because other than that, I'm in there with people who are their 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 10th prison number. This is what they do now. They get out, reoffend, come back, and that's just where they live. So, I'm 23, I get out, I'm on post-release control because I'd served all my, and I'm trying not to get too, one-sided about the prison system or anything.
No, it's okay. This is your perspective. I want to hear your perspective.
Definitely my perspective.
Yeah, 100%.
Because I had served every day of my time, it would be double jeopardy to give me parole. I should have been released free and clear. Well, the way around that, it's called post-release control. So they just renamed it, and it's parole, basically. So I'm on parole when I get out. Which means there's stipulations. I have to, have nothing, but I have to figure out how to get, 40 minutes away to my probation officer or parole officer. So then, they want you to get a job, all these other things. I tried to get a job at many different places. Well, when you just got released 4 days ago after years with no skills, it's harder to get a job. So I remember applying at Chipotle.
Yeah.
And thinking I'd screw it. I have to do something to earn money. and it was like my self-worth. I let my self-worth go down. I thought I was better than fast food. Chipotle wouldn't hire me. And so at that point I was like, okay, well, if society's going to reject me, I'm going to do whatever the hell I want. Which at that point didn't know what it was, but it probably wasn't good. So I started hanging out with the old people I used to hang out with. And then to numb those feelings of rejection and failure and hopelessness and all that, fell back into the same hard drugs that helped me forget those feelings when I was fighting the prison case in the beginning. Plus it was the, height of the opioid epidemic.
Sure,
So everybody was, not everybody, my circle of influence was strung out, or my circle of friends. So.
Wow. Okay.
It takes a while to get better with the story, or to get.
No, this is good.
To the better part.
Well, it's in my mind is like I'm hearing these, like you said, these entrepreneurial, I don't know, inklings in there. Despite all of what you're going through, like you became the head of this drug organization essentially at one point. So I want to get there, but I don't want to shortcut like the next step of this story.
Can I
please
cut
go.
you off? I'm sorry.
Yeah, go for it.
While I was incarcerated, the phone calls in there are $5 for 15 minutes if you don't live in that immediate area zip code where you're incarcerated. So I was in a 614 Columbus prison. I lived in a 937 thing. I'm trying to think how much I can say. Basically, Google Voice numbers. Everybody knows what those are. Call forwarding, things like that. You could set those up for free, and it would change the cost for me to call my mom from $5 to $1. Well, I ended up selling those for $20 a piece, 3 for $50. You could wire the money, pay me in whatever miscellaneous things. I did 3,000 of those.
Wow.
Turned the whole camp into basically a $1 phone call camp, to the point where Global Tel-Link lost an insane, whatever. I made a positive impact, in my opinion, because I think they were taking advantage of people,
Sure.
people's desire to talk to their family, know.
Right.
And it was $15 to call out of state. It was like $30 for the Mexican guys to call to Mexico.
Right.
And it transformed all those into $1. So
holy cow! All right, so there's a lot there on entrepreneurialism that we'll come to. All right, so at this point you're about a year out, I'm going to guess, or maybe not even a year out, where you're mired back in addiction. You're back with this social circle. We're probably within that first year after being released. When does this start to change for you, or did you still not hit your bottom at this point?
Yeah, we're years out. From that, with drug addiction and, no income, basically, it's petty crime. It's, shoplifting, things like that. So I, eventually racked up, charges that were going to cause me to go back to prison. So from a, friend will say, Florida didn't extradite. Well, while I was in prison, my brother had gone to a rehab in Florida at the Salvation Army. And so I didn't necessarily think that I was, strung out or whatever, but my desire to not go back to prison, I was like, hey, I'll definitely try this. So I ended up flying down, taking a red eye to Florida, knowing I was about to be indicted on a felony receiving stolen property or, whatever.
Yeah.
So I got into that program down there. That's where at least the desire to get better started. I saw people who came from my situation and were at least making it. They were surviving. They were happy. They may have not been doing crazy awesome things, but they were, in the sense of helping other people and they themselves not being very unproductive members of society.
Yeah.
So.
Why your brother went into rehab in Florida? Did you ever consider doing that while you were in Ohio as you were going through it, or were you just so it wasn't really an awareness? Like you said, you didn't know you were strung out. Is that the issue?
Yeah, it wasn't a big enough problem for me to feel that it needed addressed.
How did his become? Not to get too into it, but was there something different between you and your situation and his situation that made him go? Was it forced or?
It wasn't forced for him. I think he hit his bottom quicker. Or
Okay.
everybody has a different bottom, or what they view to be. And for him, he had kind of got to that point and gone down there.
So how long were you in Florida?
So I stayed down there for right over 2 years. I had 2 years sober down there. I actually ran with the program, for it when I got down there.
But did you have an indictment? Were you charged in Ohio?
Because they had never served me, it was just kind of a drifting.
But the second you step back in the state, you would be served.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, continue. I'm sorry.
So, I got really into recovery down there. Did AA, ended up sponsoring people. I relapsed right at that 2-year mark, and then like I mentioned, when you get comfortable with a new low, you fall back into that really, really quickly. So since I was already shooting drugs in Ohio, I fell right back into that when I relapsed in Florida. So I battled with that for a little while down there, moved up to Georgia with a friend, and then kind of worked my way back to Ohio. Well, I'd kind of gotten my stuff back together again, after rehab, after relapse. And this is where the next couple of years starts with just, getting better, failing, getting better, failing. But I had the desire to get better. I knew that it was possible, and I knew it was something that I wanted because I liked who I was when I was sober.
Wow.
And so coming back to Ohio to get back into the relationship I had prior to prison, a short period after, and then the same relationship I'm in now with my son's mother. I knew that the pending felony was something to handle.
Yeah.
So I hired an attorney. I thought it's been a couple years since this charge. I haven't caught any new charges in the last 2 years, 2.5 years, 3 years. There's no way they're going to be that hard on me. It's like an $80 receiving stolen property. It should be a misdemeanor.
Sure.
I was wrong. So I show up to court with my attorney, and I've got my little suit, kind of what I would call a suit at that point in time. And he gave me a $250,000 bond and threw me right in jail.
Wow.
I don't even pretend to understand that situation, but that'll screw up your self-worth.
Yeah. You would come so far.
Yeah. In comparison to the lifestyle and the things that I was doing, plus the amount of effort I had put in to stop living that way, even though I hadn't been, it wasn't 100% successful. It was still significantly in a better direction. They didn't give a damn about that. So I went straight to jail. Ended up going to jail for 3-4 months to a program. So that's why I do what I do now, and we'll get into that. But that program sucks. It probably still does. I imagine it still does. Sure. They don't really know, in my opinion, what to do with people, with drug addicts. So they just kind of see if it works. Here, try this new thing, try this out. Just put them here for a while. At least they're controlled.
Yeah.
Complete that program, get out on house arrest, and stay sober for a little bit and relapse and stay sober for a little bit. And basically, I don't know if you want any more questions or
So there's a couple that are coming to mind. So you went through this cycle of sober relapse. I want to ask you about what you would say. Like you just said a moment ago, the program doesn't know what to do with a drug addict. So if somebody has a loved one in their family that's struggling with opioids, especially right now, and it's still a crisis, a huge crisis, or any drug addiction for that matter, how should they deal, the program that you were in, how should they have dealt with somebody who has a drug addiction, or how should somebody who's dealing with a loved one with an addiction right now help them? What's the next best thing? I mean, obviously not shame them. So what do you do?
And that's really hard it's a really sensitive subject for a lot of people, and it's a really hard thing. What I'm doing now is trying to, learn the best answer to that as possible. But I think trying to help somebody learn, decide what they want, come up with a goal worth pursuing.
Yeah.
Come up with their why, like not, I want to get sober because I have a son. It's like, I want to get sober because I don't want to, die and make sure, and destine my son to have a screwed up life.
Sure.
And so it's just helping him come up with, like what is worth pursuing, and not to be too lofty, but be lofty with your goals. Try to give them something that's more, try to help them come up with something that's worth pursuing more than the drugs. There's the physical, mental, all the different addictions to the drug.
Yeah.
But, having the aspirations or even just feeling like you're worthy of having something else to pursue, that's where we start.
How old is your son now?
He's 2. He's about to be 3.
2, almost 3. So this is a few years ago. You have your son. Give me what was the situation there? Was this expected? Did you and your girlfriend try to have a kid together? Or?
Yeah.
Okay. Were you sober at that point? Kind of give me the circumstances of that.
So, I wanted to have a kid. I wanted to have a boy specifically. I got lucky on the first try. So she has we have a about to be 8-year-old girl. Her father sadly passed in a similar circumstance. And so having her, she would have been, 3 or 4 at the time.
Yeah.
Really wanted to have a boy. I figure, let's get this ball rolling. Now I've got an uncle with 5 girls. And I was like, man, if I keep having girls, at least we need to figure it out now and start this ball rolling.
Get your boy. Yeah. Yeah.
I had my boy the first shot, no more kids. So, so we got one each. I'm happy. He was born in February 2019.
Wow.
And 2018.
Now,
goodness.
Have you? If he's going to be 3, it's 2019. Yeah.
2019. Yeah, man.
And have you been clean since?
So I was sober, while she was pregnant with him. And then I stayed sober, when he was young. Relapsed when he was still an infant, like 6 months old. And that was a short relapse, but it was a significant one. So that's when I overdosed. I'd only been using for like a week, and I was being so careful though,
Yeah.
But it's fentanyl, that's the majority of the street opiate now, and whether you want it to be or not, that's what it is. So I'd gotten some new stuff from somebody I didn't know very well. Just put a tiny bit in, and I dropped my son off at my mom's to babysit him, and I was going to get some food at Taco Bell, and at the drive-through window, or the order window is obviously a super convenient place, and shot up, and that was it. Don't remember anything. I do actually remember some of it. Whole other podcast though.
Sure.
But yeah, wake up. They're putting, they're rolling me into the hospital. They'd Narcan me, oxygen. They thought I was on some other stuff. They had trouble bringing me back for a little bit. That and my dog was in the car and fought him off for a while.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Got my dog impounded. Yeah. So no, but from that's what, I guess I thought I was invincible or something. I didn't think I could die, or I'd done so many drugs. I didn't think it was likely that I would be the one that overdosed. Well, that was a severe overdose. I had the convulsions where your muscles are trying to pump oxygen back into your, or your blood and into your extremities. There wasn't this big feeling of regret or I screwed up or anything like that. And not to get super biblical or anything, but
go for it.
I think there's a part in the Bible where when you die, your sins are forgiven to some extent. And it was something crazy like that where I didn't feel all the shame, all the weight of all the screwed up decisions I had made.
You felt cleansed?
I felt I was I know I don't want to die.
Yeah.
I clearly do, I have a solid, North Star now, don't die and absolutely screw my son over. This little innocent baby, he would be, He would have very low odds of success.
Yeah.
And if I'm not going to die, I need to figure out how to change this situation, because I've been poor, broke, struggling my whole life. Like, just screw this, I'm over it. Like, let's figure this out.
This is your epiphany moment.
This is the now it's time to move forward, and figure out how to move forward.
What's the first thing you do?
Like the very first thing I did was just like go home and sit and just reflect, because it was hard. It was a lot to process.
Yeah.
And then, my mom wanted to be mad at me, and out of fear, and she was super upset.
Sure.
And I had to explain to her, like, she, now she's worried because that comfortable with your new low, like, if you
go right back to it,
back to that point. Now this is going to be my new normal. Now I'm overdosing all the time, and I might not get lucky in a place where the person behind me would want to get would want to order their food, and it might be in a parking lot somewhere where nobody finds me for 10 hours.
Yeah, 100%.
So trying to explain to her why I'm so calm about it, because, like, I don't feel, I wasn't worried about that anymore. I knew that, I didn't want to die, and I was going to sure as shit never shoot dope again.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So I've managed to not do that. And it's, What About Bob? Have you seen that?
Oh
movie?
yeah, long time ago.
Your death therapy cured me, or something.
Yeah. Well, hey, like, everybody has their moment. That was your epiphany moment. You're a friend of mine. His name is Darren Prince. He's a recovering opioid addict. He's an agent for Magic Johnson. People like
I've read
that.
his book. Yeah,
Aiming High. He talks about his God moment. He had a God moment in July 2nd of 2008 or something like that. That sounds like your God moment, is at least how he would describe it. Did you find One Life next, or did One Life find you? Like, what was as we talked about in the intro, your story went from we've got to your low. Yeah. You're reflecting, trying to explain. I love the how you describe that. Like, I didn't feel anything other than kind of clean or cleansed of whatever my life was. Light. Great word. So we know now today you're an entrepreneur. You've taken those skills you talked about and you put them in play. You've got businesses that you run. You've got property that you own. All of that stuff. And this is in a short time frame. We're talking in under 2 years, essentially, that you've gone from where you were to now, or around 2 years maybe. But where does One Life come in? Kind of give me the timeline of events. Did you just start, like, looking at property and then, I found One Life, or what's the sequence?
Yeah. So. So that happened in August 2019. From there, I just, I still had my tools from, doing handyman work, miscellaneous Craigslist jobs, things like that. I've worked for, a couple guys. By the end of that year, I started to take on, like, I don't know, new projects or bigger projects, or maybe it was people now that I, was doing better. Like, my brother-in-law, he wanted to build an arcade. That's a pretty expensive build. So I, did it a lot cheaper. But it was also building that relationship with my brother-in-law, he's a school teacher. He's a great human. I just wanted to spend more time with him, so I probably wouldn't even cared if he paid me anyways. But, now that I was trying, now that I didn't want to die, it's like, need to really focus on just anything positive.
Yeah.
So the end of the year, I save up $3,000, mostly from that job. December 24th, I'm in the basement at the place we rent, and I Google, how do I invest $3,000? Bigger Pockets episode comes up. And it's, super entrepreneurial. Yeah. They're mentioning, books at the end of it, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Richest Man in Babylon. And, I'm hyped at the end of that podcast. So I'm listening to, Rich Dad, Poor Dad next, and then start just consuming Bigger Pockets episodes. I think it was only a couple in. It was Tim and Pat talking about, I think it was the Tribe of Millionaires book.
Probably, yeah. Yeah. It's about that time frame. Yeah, sounds about right.
And, Tim mentions One Life Fully Lived and, helping, kids escape poverty and this and that. And I'm like, oh, well, that's okay. Perfect. Yeah. Well, so I go and check it out, and the roadmap was still online at that point. And I start filling that out. And I did a vision exercise of theirs, and it was, where do you, close your eyes, where, look out to when you're 100 years old, where are you? Who's around you? What's it feel like? What's there? Who's there? I had never, first off, I never felt like I deserved to live to 40, let alone 100. And then the thought of, my kids and my grandkids and having, this is gonna make me emotional, having a successful family that gets along and like functions and everybody's healthy and happy. And I was the one that made that happen. That messed me up, like in a good way.
I know
what I mean?
Yeah, sure.
I remember just like streaming tears on my face writing this thing out.
Yeah.
And that gave me like even more drive than just like, hey, I don't want this to happen. It's like, oh well, now I really want this to happen.
Yeah.
So I started like diving in. The COVID was just hitting, so One Life had done a bunch of stuff online. So now I'm on all the Zoom calls and I'm trying to learn everything I can like a sponge. Anybody even mentions a book, I'm writing it down, listening to it.
Yeah.
So with the skills I had, real estate made sense. First it was, I started my company to rehab other investors' properties so I could learn. It's just amazing that when you have goals and purpose and whatever, it's amazing how fast things can happen. And I mean, steps can be skipped and all this other stuff. So that all, Christmas Eve, 2019, I'm trying to, for time reasons, speed this up a little bit. By March of 2020, I am buying my first 4-unit with the guy who's rehabbing the house next to the one I'm renting.
Incredible.
I'm not putting any money down. I'm doing the rehab in exchange for equity.
You found a way.
Yeah. Before I'm done with that, I got 3 of the 4 units done with that. There's a house that I actually used to break into and sleep in when I was homeless that I'm purchasing for 20 grand. Now that, other people are seeing me like make some progress, they're wanting to help out, and that was super nice of them. That was my dad.
Yeah.
He loaned me the 20 grand to borrow that, or to buy that house at with 5,000 interest.
Wow.
Don't get me wrong.
5,000 interest? Wow.
25%. But,
yeah.
I'll take it.
You got it. You got it. Right. Yeah.
I wouldn't trade it. Yeah. I wouldn't change it at all. So then, before I'm even done with our first investment property, still as a, renter, I've got tenants in that one. Then I'm buying my own house. Now I'm rehabbing my own house. And then getting to another property after that. Now, and so right now I've got 10 doors. I've got my house with no mortgage on it. Actually coming up on 2 years in June, I'll be able to sell it. I still haven't been able to get a loan against it because of, my unconventional, self-employed. Banks aren't really huge on that. So, but I'll own it for 2 years. I bought it for 20. I've put almost 50 into it now. Yeah. But it's worth, with recent appreciation, like 150, 155,000.
Wow, that's amazing.
That's a lot of money sitting there that can be used.
Absolutely. To expand and grow and keep going. Do you worry about, at this point, any, does it creep into your mind, the demons, relapsing, any of that? I mean, are you so clear on where you're going in your vision that's not just sort of like in the past, it's not there, or does it still haunt you?
No, I don't. Prior times getting sober, I would have nightmares where I used and screwed something up and things like that. I haven't had that since the overdose. For me, I don't feel like it. Obviously, it's something I guard myself against, but with all the self-improvement that comes with, working on yourself or entrepreneurship, staying in that zone, I feel pretty comfortable. And any flags that get brought up, I notice it quicker than I would if I was just trying to stay sober.
Yeah.
If I'm, irritable, or I'm not connecting with my kids well, or me and Ayla aren't getting along, those things stick out a lot sooner because of all the other practices in place, trying to optimize my life.
Makes sense.
So
makes sense. What's 5 years from now look like? What's your big vision? What's your goal for the next 3, 4, 5 years?
Yeah, so it's going to be getting into, I think for the next, let's say 2 to 3, 4 years, it's going to be in the smaller apartment complex. We're going to stay in that. Right now we're looking in the, 8 to 15 range. But I'm working myself out of, I do all the management still right now, I do all the rehab, or I run the crew, rehabbing. I want to work myself out of that because I don't intend to raise my kids in Dayton, Ohio.
Yeah.
We want to come out here to the Rockies. We like Idaho. We like Utah, any of this area. So, and then really hone in on the data that we're starting to get. So we're on our 3rd round with One Life, with the addiction recovery group that I started with them, or for them. Specifically, I really want to figure out what makes that so successful.
Yeah.
We've had 3 people start businesses.
Oh, nice.
So like 1 out of each person, or one out of each group.
Yeah.
Yeah. My bookkeeper.
Oh yeah.
She started her own bookkeeping business.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Man. So you're
It's
making
cool.
now you're starting to make that impact.
I want to take what worked for me because it worked.
Yeah.
Like the 13 years it took me to get out of, the criminal justice system, and then in like you just said, in such a short amount of time to be able to completely turn my life around. Those were just tools and skills that I didn't have, that nobody taught me.
Right.
So teaching that to other people and finding out how to really deliver that message. That's the impact I want to bring to the addiction recovery space that I think is just drastically needed.
Amazing. In the interest of time, we'll have to leave it there, but there's more questions to ask, man. I'd love to dive deeper on some of this stuff. Maybe we'll have you back for another round because we did the short version, the long version of your background, the short version of your current and future. But to get into some of the stuff that you're about to do, I think it'd be really cool to do this again. So, but is there anywhere you want to direct people? I don't know if you have a social media handle you're looking for people to follow, or if it's maybe a foundation you support, like One Life. Anywhere you want to direct people to learn more?
Yeah, absolutely. Direct them to One Life. Those are my people.
So that's onelifefullylived.org.
OneLifeFullyLived.org.
The number one lifefullylived.org, right?
Yes.
Perfect. Sterling, man, thank you. This is amazing.
I'm honored to be here, Jay.
Brett, thank you.